Hello there, my name is Amanda May and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I'd give you my January TBR. For most of 2020, I planned out what I was going to read well in advance, and that worked just fine for me, even if I wasn't super in the mood to read whatever it was that was next on my list. I still read it and it didn't seem to be much of a problem. But lately, I feel like I'm turning a corner and being a little more of a mood reader. So I had a really hard time committing to what I plan on reading in January. It's changed a bunch of times and I'm hoping that it's close enough to January that it won't change much again, but we'll see. Hopefully, if I do feel like reading something that isn't on my January TBR, I will be able to just let myself make the change. Just let myself read what it is I want to read and not feel super guilty about it, because plans were made to be changed. It'll be fine, right? I'll read all of these books eventually. I hope I read them in January, but we shall see. First up on the list, I am very confident I'm going to read this in January because it is number 3 in the Mistborn trilogy, The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. I read books 1 and 2 in, I guess, November and December of this year. I recently read books 1 and 2, and so I am eager to finish out the trilogy. Very, very excited for this. I have a cat in my lap. This is my kitty, Mistletoe. He's a big old sweetheart, but he doesn't know when to stop being annoying. You can stay here if you behave. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. He's purring. You probably can't hear it, but he does have a decently loud purr. So I've already talked about the Mistborn trilogy a bunch on my channel, but I will give you a brief synopsis of the first book in case you haven't heard of it. It takes place in a world where 1,000 years ago there was this hero of prophecy that was supposed to defeat this evil dark power, but he failed, and so for 1,000 years darkness has reigned. This is a very kind of depressing world, a very very colorless world, a world filled with hardship and slavery, and our main characters come up with a plan to overthrow the evil Lord Ruler. So if you like heist books, or if you like the found family trope, this is definitely for you. I highly recommend that you pick this up. The first one, not this one. The first one, called Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. But I am really excited to read the third one and finally figure out how this story ends. The next book on my TBR is actually a book that I got my husband for Christmas, but he's currently reading Throne of Glass, so it might take a while for him to get around to reading this book, so I'm gonna go first. But that is Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. This book was recommended by Elliot Brooks earlier this year, and she has nothing but really great things to say about it. She definitely sold me on the story, and really it made me think of my husband, hence why I got it for him for Christmas. So I'm really hoping that he enjoys it and that I enjoy it. But it is about this prince, I think, whose family was all killed when he was very young because the royal family was pretty corrupt. And so he somehow escapes the slaughter and is sent to an orphanage where he meets the other main character, who is also an orphan, but she is an orphan because her entire family was killed by his family before they were deposed. But I don't think either of them really knows how their pasts are entwined at the beginning, which is really, really interesting. And of course, as the cover suggests, there are dragons in this world. So it is a dragon-filled political fantasy, as I understand it. And that so intrigues me, and I'm really excited to pick this up, especially since Elliot Brooks has such high praise for this book. And the sequel is coming out in March, so that's exciting too. And just to make January a dragon-filled month, the next book on my TBR is House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess? I'm not sure. So in this story, after the emperor, I think, the ruler of the land, dies, the oldest child from each of the major houses is chosen to compete in the trial with a capital T. And in this trial, only one will come out victorious. I think only one comes out alive, and that person is the next ruler. However, the competitors are not chosen by people. They're chosen by magic or fate, or some kind of force decides who is going to be competing. And for some reason, I don't think any of the eldest children of the main houses are chosen. And so it gives you a list, kind of like some other YA books do, where you have the liar, the soldier, the servant, the thief, the murderer, as your 5 people competing. And each person has a dragon. And apparently this is very dragon heavy. The dragons are supposedly their own characters, and you, I would assume, get their points of view, or at least they talk in some sense. So very excited, very interesting premise. Supposedly the writing is really good. I've heard that it's very easy to tell from whose point of view you're reading because the characters are well defined, and really just haven't heard anything bad about this book. And so I'm really eager to pick it up. I'm noticing that my January is very young adult fantasy heavy. I think Brandon Sanderson's The Hero of Ages might be the only adult fantasy book that I'm reading. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Usually I enjoy adult fantasy more, but I like YA, so it could be fine. We'll see. So next up on my TBR is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. There are a lot of people that really like this series, but I've also heard some people talk about it with less than adoring sentiment. Really, I'm just curious to see where I'll fall on the spectrum, whether or not I will like this series, but I'm really hoping that I do. So in this world, we have Fae and humans, and as the title kind of suggests, the Fae are rather cruel. Our main character, a human, was, I think, orphaned, and her 2 sisters were stolen away to live at the Fae court, which sounds kind of dangerous considering there's a cruel prince. And I'm not super sure about what the conflict in this book really is, but I'm pretty sure the main character has to navigate the royal court and gets entangled with the cruel prince. And I'm thinking they're gonna have to work together to resolve whatever the conflict is. And so I'm expecting an enemies to lovers trope, which I'm good with. And really just hoping that I fall in love with the characters, because if I do, if I really like the characters in this book, the plot is less important, to be honest. I'm a very character-driven reader, so high hopes for The Cruel Prince. Next on my January TBR is another entry into a YA fantasy series, The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. This is another one where I've heard a bunch of really good reviews, but also some not so great reviews. So again, we'll see where I stand. This is a world that is divided by blood. There are those with red blood and those with silver blood. The red-blooded people live to serve the silver-blooded people who have supernatural powers and are therefore in a higher caste. Only when our main character's best friend is conscripted into the military, she finds herself trying to free him. And somehow she finds herself inside the royal palace, where she discovers that she has powers she didn't know about, except twist, her blood is red, so that shouldn't make any sense. In order to hide this from the masses, the king gives her the title of the Lost Silver Princess and betroths her to one of his sons. And so she, as I understand it, works from the inside to help a red rebellion. I'm expecting a decent amount of political intrigue and deception, and also hoping for a decent romance as well. We shall see. The next book I don't have a hard copy of because it hasn't come out yet, but I pre-ordered Winterkeep by Kristen Cashore. This is book 4 in the Graceling series. It's not really a series because they're all kind of standalones, but they go together, and I am so looking forward to it. So looking forward to it. I'll put a picture up here. So if you haven't read Graceling or you haven't heard of it, it takes place in a world where there are certain people called Gracelings who have an innate ability. They are essentially a prodigy at one thing, whether it's cooking or fighting or dancing. It could be anything. But there's a tell if somebody's a Graceling. Their eyes are 2 different colors. The main character in the first book, Graceling, is a prodigy at killing, and she meets up with a prince from another kingdom who is also a Graceling, and they go on an adventure, and it's really great, and I highly suggest you read it. And That way you can work your way up to Winter Keep, which is coming out in just a couple weeks. And I'm so excited. I believe that makes 6 books for January, which to be honest is I think the most books I've read in a month, if you don't count like manga and really short stories. So this is really ambitious, but I'm gonna add a 7th book because I really need to finish this series. So if I have time for it, I also plan on reading Imagine Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is the last book in the 6-book series plus some shorter novellas, and I need to finish it. I'm a completionist and I need to finish the series so that I can be done with it and so that I can move on to other things without this nagging me in the back of my brain. This is the conclusion to the Shatter Me series, and to be honest, this series takes quite a few turns. So by the time you get to this book, it doesn't really feel like the same world as the first book. I feel like that's a relatively common thing in YA fantasy. Nevertheless, I will tell you a little bit about the first book. So this is a dystopian in which children started being born with supernatural abilities. Kind of think mutants from X-Men. And our main character has a poisonous touch. Anybody that she touches, skin to skin, dies relatively quickly. And so the book opens up with her being locked up in a facility until she is released in order to be used as a weapon. And I feel like that's all I can say. I do really enjoy Tahereh Mafi's writing style. I thought it was really unique. That was one of the things that really drew me in when I was reading Shatter Me, the first book. She writes almost like stream of consciousness, like somebody's writing in a journal. There are lines that are crossed out, and it just was really intriguing. It felt like you were really in the mind of this teenage girl. So that's cool. But yeah, stuff happens. There are some crazy twists and turns, and I just need to finish this series, so I'm hoping that I get to this book. I should mention, it's also very possible that I will be starting an audiobook, and none of the books I mentioned I will be listening to via Audible. So if I do feel like listening to an audiobook, I'll probably pick up The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, and I'm also really excited about that one. That is Murphy Napier's favorite book or series ever, and one that my husband has listened to and really enjoyed, so that is also on my radar for January. And that is all. That is my January TBR, total of 7 books. Pretty ambitious for me, but crossing my fingers that I can do it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you feel so inclined, please hit subscribe, and you can also hit the little bell icon so that you get notified whenever I post new videos. Additionally, please leave a comment down below telling me what you plan on reading in January, or if you read any of the books that I plan on reading in January and whether or not you liked them. I'd really appreciate that. I'd love to hear what you think about these books and really just chat with you about books. That's why I'm here. In any case, I will see you in the next video. Bye!